one of the issues I think that fogs this whole discussion is the concept, which is very widespread, that science does not involve faith and religion does. I think that's absolute nonsense. And the important thing, let me quote Max Planck, who won the Nobel Prize. He said once, anybody who's been seriously engaged in scientific work of any kind realizes that over the entrance to the gates of the temple of science are written the words, "You must have faith." It is a quality that scientists cannot dispense with. And I remember coming across Einstein's work, where he said he couldn't imagine a scientist without that faith. Now, he didn't mean religious faith. He meant faith in the rational intelligibility of the universe. You cannot do any science without believing that. So science has its own credo, and that means that there's a convergence that many people don't realize between the scientific outlook and the religious outlook. And so in response to the point you made, Luke, just a moment or two ago, there's a danger in thinking, yes, science is rational, it doesn't involve faith, and it's based on evidence. Well, I want to say my faith in God as a Christian is rational, and it is based on evidence, both historical evidence and experimental evidence. And so, to my mind, the ways of thinking are somewhat similar, although, of course, the issues are greater. In other words, pure mathematics makes less claim on me than my faith in Christ. But there's a deep similarity. And the whole question of evidence, which is crucial to John's work, I know, and it's crucial to my work, I think it's important to realize that evidence-based commitment, and we're always talking about evidence-based research, particularly in epidemiology, I think, is extremely important. And it's important in my attitude to my own Christian faith.
Professor Lennox, if I could just ask, you spoke about having evidence for faith or evidence for religious belief. You sometimes hear people saying that if you have evidence for something, then you no longer need faith. So are they operating with a different idea of what faith is?
I think they're not thinking. There's very strong evidence that smoking causes lung disease. And my college head, Richard Dahl, one of the most famous epidemiologists in the world, discovered that. But I notice there are many people that know that that's true, but they don't commit themselves to it. They don't believe it. I think that's absolute nonsense, that if we know something, we don't commit ourselves to it. Of course we do. I know about Newton's laws, but I also believe them. I believe that they work. They give us a helpful handle on some aspects of the way in which the universe works. So I don't think that faith displaces knowledge. That is a category mistake, I think, philosophically.
I think that you're making a very interesting point, and I think that faith is important in science as well. Perhaps we need a different term or something to differentiate the type of faith that is involved in science. For example, Bayesian thinking can be considered as one way of modifying your faith in different circumstances with different evidence. You change your prior to a posterior belief. I mean, belief is the term that we use. But of course, it is different, I believe, qualitatively to the belief or the faith that is involved in religious feeling, without saying that it is better or worse. There's also other terms that are very important. For example, the notion of making mistakes, which I started my presentation. There's the notion of sin, which is the equivalent in religion. And basically, if you look at, for example, Saint Gregory Palamas and the prayer, Jesus Christ, forgive me, the sinner, which is very central, forgive me who makes a lot of mistakes. I mean, this is very close to a scientist who also makes a lot of mistakes, but there's qualitatively a difference in the type of mistakes. And And I think it's the ethical coloring that makes that difference. And you said, ethics goes beyond science. It goes beyond everything. It's a different coloration that can change how we perceive mistakes, how we perceive faith, how we perceive beliefs, how we perceive even evidence, and how we interpret and how we act on evidence, whether we do something or not do something.
Well, you yourself have made a very important point that I always say to people when they said, can you talk to us about faith? I say, faith in what? Because unless you qualify it, the difficulty is, I think, that we use the word faith for several different things. We use it for religion, the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith. But we also use it for my subjective belief in anything at all. Some people have faith that the Irish rugby team is going to win the Grand Slam. And one might ask, have you got evidence for that? So it's very important to distinguish faith in what and faith about what, because our attitude to trusting persons is slightly different from the question of having faith or trusting in propositions. And of course, when we're dealing with God, I often remind people, God is a person. He's not an equation or a proposition. He's a person, just like trusting you or you trusting me. We're trusting a person. Now, we don't trust persons, at least I hope we don't, without some evidence on which to base that trust. But it's a much more holistic kind of evidence. It's much more complex. So in that sense, qualitatively, it is very different. And you're right in introducing the ethical dimension. If I make a mistake in pure mathematics, I don't think I'm sinning. But if I cheat and produce results that I know to be false, then I am sinning and I need forgiveness. And that is one of the very important evidences to me of the truth of Christianity, because as human beings, we struggle, we fail, we have made mistakes. And you started on the question of mistakes, and it's hugely important in the Christian faith. It's encapsulated in the statement, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And to my mind, one of the reasons I'm a convinced Christian is I believe that Christ has provided the solution of that. It is death and resurrection. Now, that's a very complex thing. But on the other hand, it has been the doorway for millions of people to find peace of mind and peace of heart. So you're right, there's a qualitative difference.